Graduating from TSU, I went to New York, where, of course, I was married to my fiance, who was also at Tennessee State, and we both began working with the New York City Human Resources Administration in the area of social work. My specialty was in community organization. I worked throughout New York City for 30 years in that field, and of course received a master's degree in social work from Hunter College School of Social Work. And of course both my wife and I retired at the end of 1992, and it had always been our plan to move back to this area, and we decided that we would move back here, and we built a home here in this area. And I became, of course, I approached Coach Davis about volunteering my services at Tennessee State as a volunteer coach, and he was kind enough to let me come on board, and I'm presently doing that, working with the offensive line. It has really been a rewarding experience for me in this area. I've never really coached before, but it's always been my desire to give back to the university and to work with young men. And I find that to be an exciting and very rewarding, and I'm really enjoying it to the utmost at this point.
Very good. You know, Mr. Franks, I think that people are often, will often hear the word sports information director and whatnot. But from your perspective, why don't you give our audience some information relative to exactly what do you do as the sports information director at Tennessee State University?
Well, every day is different. There's many challenges that each day presents itself. You'll never do the same thing on a particular day. One day you could be working with stats. Another day you could be looking past records and things along that nature, finding historical data. You may be working with the media to arrange for interviews for your players and coaches, not only locally but nationally. You may be preparing for an upcoming game on television, where, of course, this year we're on ESPN2, BET, and so that requires a lot more work and preparation, getting the announcers ready to do the broadcast. So it also involves in doing press releases, publishing the media guides, as well as the game programs. Has many, many hats, many facets of the job.
But it all puts you deeply involved with the athletic program as the director of that program.
Well, I think it's very, very important, whether you're representing football or volleyball, to really know your athletes, know the program, and because it's very important to not only the athletes but also their families. Because you can't tell me that the person who's on the volleyball team doesn't put out as much effort as a player on the football squad. They're both out there representing the university, and I feel it's important to acknowledge that.
You know, Coach Metcalf, you've indicated that you played football on a championship team, and that finally 30 years later you're back involved in collegiate coaching. Now, in looking at what happened in collegiate athletics, and especially football, during your earlier years when you participated in collegiate football, what differences do you see now between the young men who are out there with you and the young men you are now fortunate enough to deal with as a volunteer coach?
Well, one of the outstanding differences in terms of attending the Classic that I went to last week in Memphis, and the one that I attended as a player in 1956 at Tennessee State when we played Florida A&M in the Orange Bowl, was that it was my first experience playing before that many people, of about 50,000. And I was most surprised that, of course, in those days, most of the spectators were white. And, of course, in Memphis, the majority of the people there were black. And, of course, I found that to be true at other classics that I've attended, such as Grambling playing Howard in the Meadowlands. It seems to be one of the things that's happening all over the country. But in terms of the players, I think the guys are bigger now, and of course they're faster. And of course, one of the big changes is that kids that are coming to school today are specialists in their position, both offensive players and defensive players. And of course, when I came along, we played both ways. We played offense and defense. And of course, these kids are specialists in their positions. And they're much quicker and faster today. And I find that one of the big differences is that the offensive line are using their hands to block. Years ago, we couldn't do that. That was illegal. And of course, we used the shoulder and the head for blocking. That was one of the big differences.
Very good. You know, we've got to take our first commercial break here, Mr. Franks. And when we come back, we want you to talk about the classics, because Tennessee State University did participate in the classics. And let us take this break now. We'll be right back.